The bullets tore through the air like thunder, shaking the narrow mountain pass where SEAL Team 7 was pinned down. Through the chaos of gunfire, a desperate voice crackled over the radio. "We're gonna die. Any support? Anyone?" But every support unit was engaged elsewhere. The enemy surrounded them from 3 directions, mortars preparing to fire. Then, cutting through the static, a calm female voice. "Hold your position. I see you." Before they could respond, enemy fighters on the ridge began dropping no visible wounds, no sound. Only the whispered legend remained among special operations. The Grass Phantom had awakened. Lieutenant Commander Jake Morrison had run over 300 combat missions in his 12-year career with the SEALs. He'd inserted into hostile territory via submarine, fast-roped from helicopters into urban combat zones, and survived firefights that should have killed him twice over. None of that prepared him for the hell of Grid Sector Romeo 7. The mission brief had been straightforward. Infiltrate the mountain region, extract 3 captured intelligence officers from a militia compound, and exfiltrate via helicopter at the northern extraction point. Standard hostage rescue. His 8-man team had rehearsed the operation for 2 weeks at their forward operating base. They'd moved through the valley in the pre-dawn darkness, night vision painting the world in shades of green. The compound sat exactly where intelligence indicated, guards rotating on predictable patterns. Too predictable, Morrison realized later. They should have aborted then. The extraction went smoothly, almost suspiciously so. The hostages were alive, traumatized, but mobile. Team 7 was moving through the narrow mountain pass toward the extraction point when the world exploded. The first RPG streaked over Morrison's head, close enough that he felt the heat wash across his face. It detonated against the cliff wall behind them, showering the team with rock fragments. Before the echo faded, machine gun fire erupted from 3 directions. "Contact left, contact right," Petty Officer First Class Ryan Chen shouted, dropping behind a boulder and returning fire. The characteristic crack of AK-47 seconds mixed with the heavier thump of a PKM machine gun. Morrison's tactical mind processed the situation in seconds. They were in a kill box, a carefully prepared ambush site. The narrow pass funneled them into a natural choke point. High ground on both flanks, limited cover. The militia had planned this perfectly. "Establish defensive positions," Morrison ordered, his voice cutting through the chaos. "Travis, get those hostages behind the rocks." Chen, suppressing fire on that ridge. "Martinez, I need a sitrep on our 6. Staff Sergeant Derek Martinez, their rear security, scrambled to a vantage point. What he saw made his blood run cold. "Commander, we've got approximately 40 fighters behind us. They're closing the exit." 40. Against 8 SEALs and 3 unarmed civilians. The math was brutal. Morrison grabbed the radio. "Falcon 1, this is Ripper 7. We are under heavy contact. Grid Romeo, 739er. Multiple hostiles, 3 sides. Request immediate air support and QRF." The reply took too long. When it came, it wasn't what Morrison wanted to hear. "Ripper 7, Falcon 1. All air assets are engaged supporting Operation Grindstone. ETA for support is 45 minutes minimum. QRF is 60 minutes out. Can you hold?" Morrison looked at the situation. Ammunition wouldn't last that long. Already, rounds were impacting within feet of their position. A mortar team was setting up on the eastern ridge. He could see them through his rifle scope. "Negative, Falcon 1. We cannot hold for 45. We need support now." Silence. Then, "Ripper 7. There are no assets available. Recommend you break contact and move to alternate extraction." Break contact. Against a force 5 times their size, with civilians in tow, through terrain the enemy knew intimately. It was a death sentence disguised as tactical advice. Petty Officer Second Class Aaron Briggs, their medic, was already working on Petty Officer Third Class Kyle Henderson, who'd taken shrapnel to his leg from the first RPG. Blood soaked through the improvised bandage. "Commander, Henderson needs evac soon or he's going to lose that leg," Briggs said quietly. Morrison made the hardest calculation of his career. They had perhaps 20 minutes before being overrun. The mortar team would find their range in minutes. Air support was mythical. The quick reaction force might as well be on the moon. He keyed the radio again, this time on the emergency frequency that reached every friendly unit within 100 miles. Any station, This is SEAL Team 7, Grid Romeo 739er. We are surrounded, taking heavy fire, 1 casualty, civilians in tow. We need immediate support. Anyone. The militia fighters were getting bolder, moving closer under covering fire. Morrison saw muzzle flashes creeping down both ridges. They were preparing for a final assault. Chen fired a burst from his M4, dropping an enemy fighter who'd ventured too far forward. "Commander, I'm down to 4 magazines." Around the perimeter, the story was the same. They'd gone into the mission with standard combat loads, expecting a quick in and out, not a sustained firefight. The mortar team fired a ranging shot. It impacted 50 meters short, throwing up a geyser of dirt and rock. "Incoming mortars!" Martinez shouted. The next round would be closer. The third would kill them. Morrison looked at his team, young men he trained with, fought alongside, men who trusted him to bring them home. He looked at the 3 intelligence officers they'd just rescued, huddled behind inadequate cover, their eyes showing the terrible understanding that they might have been saved only to die anyway. He thought about his wife, Sarah, 7 months pregnant with their first child. He'd promised her he'd be careful. He'd promised he'd come home. Morrison keyed the radio one more time. His voice, usually so controlled, cracked with desperation. "Any station, this is Ripper 7. We're gonna die out here. Any support? Anyone?" Static answered him. Just static and the sound of incoming fire. The second mortar round hit 30 meters away. Close enough that Morrison felt the concussion in his chest, close enough that dirt rained down on their position like hail. The militia had their range. The next shot would be direct. "Martinez, can you spot that mortar team?" Morrison shouted. "Negative, Commander. They're dug in behind the ridge. I can't get an angle." Henderson groaned in pain. Briggs had done what he could, but field medicine only went so far. The petty officer's face was pale, his breathing shallow. Shock was setting in. "Boss, we need to move him or he's not going to make it," Briggs said urgently. "Where?" Morrison gestured at the kill box surrounding them. "We move, we die." Another burst of machine gun fire raked their position. Rounds sparked off rocks, whining as they ricocheted into the morning sky. Chief Petty Officer Nathan Drake, their senior enlisted man, returned fire with controlled 3-round bursts. "They're massing for an assault," Drake reported. His voice was steady, but Morrison heard the undercurrent of concern. Drake had been in the teams for 16 years. He knew what a doomed position looked like. Morrison pulled out his tactical tablet, desperately searching for an option he'd missed. The terrain map showed nothing but bad news. Steep cliffs to the north and south. The enemy held the high ground east and west. The pass behind them was swarming with militia. Lieutenant Junior Grade Brad Sawyer, their assistant officer in charge, crawled over. At 26, Sawyer was the youngest member of the team, but he'd proven himself in combat multiple times. "Sir, I've been monitoring enemy communications," Sawyer said, holding up his signals intelligence device. "They're coordinating a final push. 3 minutes, they're coming from all sides simultaneously. 3 minutes to live." Morrison had faced death before, had made peace with the possibility of not coming home, but the weight of command, knowing these men would die because of his decisions, was crushing. "All right," Morrison said, his voice carrying to the entire team. "We've been in tough spots before. We're SEALs. We don't quit. We're going to make these bastards pay for every inch. Check your ammunition. Make every shot count. We hold this position until air support arrives." He didn't mention that air support was still 30 minutes away, minimum. They didn't have 30 minutes. They probably didn't have 5. Chen changed magazines, his 4th to last. "It's been an honor, Commander." "Save the eulogies, Chen. We're not dead yet." But they would be. Morrison knew it. They all knew it. The communications device crackled with interference. Morrison almost ignored it, probably just atmospheric conditions mixing with the electromagnetic chaos of combat. Then he heard something through the static. A voice. Female. Calm. "SEAL Team, do you read?" Morrison grabbed the handset. "This is Ripper 7 Actual." "Who is this?" "Keep your heads down. I'm in position." "In position? What unit are you with? What's your position?" "High ground, Northwest Ridge." "I can see your entire perimeter." Morrison spun, searching the Northwest Ridge through his rifle scope. Nothing but grass, rocks, and scrub brush. No sign of any friendly forces. "I don't see anyone. Identify yourself." You don't need to see me. You need to trust me. In 30 seconds, the mortar team on your east is going to fire. They won't get the chance. Wait. How do you... The voice cut off. Morrison stared at the radio, wondering if stress and exhaustion had finally broken his mind. A mysterious sniper appearing out of nowhere to save them? It sounded like a bad movie plot. Commander? Drake asked. Who was that? I don't know. Claims to be a friendly sniper with eyes on our position. We don't have any sniper teams assigned to this AO, Sawyer said. I checked the Frago this morning. Martinez, still watching their eastern flank, suddenly shouted, "The mortar team! They're loading!" The militia fighter holding the mortar round stumbled, the round dropping from his hands. He collapsed silently. A second later, the fighter preparing to drop the round into the tube pitched backward. Then the spotter. Then the team leader. 4 fighters down in less than 4 seconds. Morrison never heard a shot, not one. What the hell? Chen breathed. On the western ridge, an enemy machine gunner firing down at their positions suddenly went still, slumping over his weapon. The fighter feeding ammunition looked around in confusion, then fell himself. They're being hit, Drake said. But I don't hear any shots, no muzzle flash. Morrison swept his scope across the northwest ridge again. Still nothing, just natural terrain, completely still in the morning light. The voice returned on the radio. You have 30 seconds before they regroup for the assault. I'm going to thin them out. When I tell you to move, take your wounded and head northwest through the gap I'm going to open. There's a trail 50 meters ahead that leads to safe ground. Who are you? Morrison demanded. Someone who doesn't let SEALs die on my watch. 30 seconds. Be ready. The radio went dead again. Martinez looked at Morrison. Sir? Morrison had no good options. Stay and die in the next assault. Trust a mysterious voice and possibly die running into another ambush. At least the second option offered a chance. Get Henderson ready to move. Briggs, you and Sawyer carry him. Chen, Travis, you're on point. Drake, rear security with me. When our guardian angel gives the word, we move fast. And the hostages? Drake asked. They stay between us and Briggs. Travis, Chen, you clear any threats ahead, go. Through his scope, Morrison watched more enemy fighters drop. A squad leader barking orders into a radio crumpled mid-sentence. A fighter running between positions collapsed as if his legs had simply stopped working. Another machine gun nest went silent as its operators fell. The militia was panicking now, firing wildly at shadows, unable to identify where death was coming from. Whoever was out there was the most skilled operator Morrison had ever seen. Now, the voice commanded. Move northwest, I have you covered. They moved as a unit, Henderson between Briggs and Sawyer, the 3 rescued officers staying low in the center of the formation. Chen and Travis led, weapons up, scanning for threats. Morrison expected to be cut down immediately. Expected the mysterious sniper to be a trick, a trap, a delusion born from desperation. Instead, as they emerged from their defensive position, the enemy fire that should have shredded them never came. He risked a glance at the eastern ridge. The militia fighters were there, at least 20 of them, but they were pinned down, trying to make themselves small, searching desperately for whoever was killing them. Another fighter fell, this one trying to move to a better firing position. No sound, no visible shot. He just crumpled like a puppet with cut strings. This is insane, Chen muttered as they moved. Who the hell is that? Travis, the team's communications specialist and part-time historian, spoke as he scanned their path. There's a legend, goes back about 3 years. Guys in the Rangers talk about her. They call her the Grass Phantom. Her? Sawyer asked, helping carry Henderson down the rocky trail. Female sniper, operates alone, no official unit assignment. Story goes, she only appears when teams are about to be wiped out, shows up, turns the tide, then vanishes. Half the guys think she's a ghost. The other half think she's just a really good operator who stays off the books. Morrison had heard whispers about the Grass Phantom during intelligence briefings, dismissed as morale-building mythology. Every war had its legends. The White Death in Finland, Carlos Hathcock in Vietnam. Story soldiers told themselves to believe that someone was watching over them. Except this was real. Someone was covering their retreat with precision that defied belief. They reached the trail the voice had mentioned, barely visible between rock formations. Morrison wouldn't have spotted it without specific directions. It angled northwest, offering concealment from the militia's main positions. Ripper 7, hold, the voice commanded. Morrison raised his fist, halting the team. They were exposed, visible from multiple directions if anyone bothered to look. Every instinct screamed to keep moving. "Why are we stopping?" Drake hissed. Before Morrison could answer, 3 militia fighters appeared on an outcropping directly ahead, weapons raised. Chen started to bring his rifle up, but the voice cut in. "Don't fire. I have them." The lead fighter's head snapped back. The second collapsed sideways off the outcropping. The third spun, trying to locate the threat, and fell before completing the turn. "Move," the voice ordered. They did, stepping over the bodies of fighters who died so quickly they hadn't had time to fire a shot. Morrison keyed his radio. "Unknown sniper, this is Ripper 7 actual. I need proper identification. What unit are you with?" "Static." "Then, no unit. Not anymore." "Then who are you?" A pause. When the voice came back, it carried weight. "History, loss, call me Shepard. That's all you need to know." "Shepard, I need confirmation you're a friendly. I need authentication codes." "Commander Morrison, you need to stop asking questions and start moving. That militia force is going to get organized in about 2 minutes, and when they do, they're going to send a hunter-killer team specifically for me. You don't want to be anywhere near that fight." She knew his name. Morrison hadn't transmitted it over the radio. That meant she had intelligence access, had done homework on his team. Not a random good Samaritan, someone with resources, training, preparation. "How do you know my name?" "I know a lot of things. I know your wife Sarah is due in 2 months. I know you promised her you'd be more careful after the Kandahar incident. I know you're going to keep that promise, because I'm getting you out of here. Now move your ass, Lieutenant Commander." The personal details shook Morrison. The Kandahar incident wasn't in any official report. The pregnancy wasn't public knowledge. Whoever Shepard was, she had access to information she shouldn't have, unless she'd been part of the community. A former operator with maintained connections, someone who'd gone dark, but still had eyes in the intelligence apparatus. They continued down the trail, the morning sun now fully above the horizon, painting the mountain slopes in gold and shadow. Henderson's breathing was labored but steady. The 3 rescued officers moved in silence, still processing their second near-death experience in 12 hours. Chen froze. "Contact front, 200 meters." Morrison saw them 6 militia fighters moving up the trail toward them. The enemy had the same idea. Use the concealed route to flank around. "Shepard, we have enemy ahead on the trail." "I see them. Keep moving. They won't reach you. They're less than 200 meters away. We need to engage." "Trust me." The lead militia fighter pointed toward Morrison's team, shouting something in Pashto. They raised their weapons. Morrison had no choice but to return fire except before he could give the order. All 6 fighters collapsed in rapid succession. Not wounded, dead. "Jesus Christ," Travis whispered. 6 targets, maybe 3 seconds. Where the hell is she shooting from? Morrison scanned the ridge lines again. The northwest ridge was at least 800 meters away, with complex terrain and wind patterns between. The shots would require not just exceptional marksmanship but an intimate understanding of ballistics, meteorology, and the local geography. And she was doing it while moving, staying ahead of counter-sniper efforts, maintaining overwatch on his entire team. "Shepard, what's your position? How are you tracking with us?" "I move where I need to be. Right now, I need to be between you and a very angry militia commander who just realized his ambush failed. He's sending his best people after me." "Hunter squad?" "Elite fighters specifically trained to eliminate snipers. They're good, I'm better. But they're going to make a lot of noise looking for me, and that noise might draw attention your way. You need to be 500 meters further down this trail before that starts. Shepard, fall back to our position. We can provide security while you..." "Commander, I appreciate the offer, but you'd be in my way. I work alone, always have. Now stop talking and start moving." The radio clicked off. Corporal Rashid Ahmadi was the best sniper hunter in the militia. He'd trained with Russian advisors, learned counter-sniper tactics in Syria, and personally eliminated 4 American snipers in the past 2 years. When Commander Malik called for volunteers to hunt whoever was decimating his forces, Rashid didn't hesitate. He led a 5-man team, all veterans, all killers. They moved up the northwest ridge in a tactical formation that had never failed them. 2 men with thermal scopes, 2 spotters with high-powered optics, and Rashid himself with a Dragunov rifle equipped with the best scope Russian money could buy. "Spread out," Rashid ordered in Pashto. "Whoever they are, they're somewhere on this ridge. Nobody is that good from distance. They have to be close." His men deployed across a 100-meter frontage, each covering a sector, each moving carefully through the grass and rocks. Rashid had learned that American snipers relied on technology, computerized scopes, expensive ghillie suits, laser rangefinders. All that equipment left signatures: heat, reflection, movement. He would find those signatures and eliminate the threat. Rashid settled into a position behind a rock outcropping, scanning through his scope. The morning sun was a problem, creating glare and heat mirage, but he was patient. Every sniper eventually made a mistake. They adjusted position, they checked their equipment, they moved. 15 minutes passed. Nothing. Rashid keyed his radio. "Status?" "Northeast sector clear," replied Javid, his second-best shooter. "East sector clear," said Mahmoud. "Southeast clear," reported Tariq. Only Farhan, his youngest team member, didn't respond. "Farhan, status." Silence. Rashid felt the first tendril of unease. "Farhan, report." Through his scope, Rashid could see Farhan's position, 50 meters to his left. The young fighter was lying behind a grass-covered berm, his rifle pointed downslope, but he wasn't moving. "Javid, check on Farhan." "Moving." Rashid watched Javid low-crawl toward Farhan's position. Good technique, minimal exposure. Javid reached Farhan, touched his shoulder. Then Javid rolled Farhan over and scrambled backward, his face visible even at distance, pure shock. "He's dead, shot through the head, but there's no..." Javid's head snapped sideways. He collapsed across Farhan's body. Rashid's blood turned to ice. 2 of his men, dead, and he hadn't heard a single shot. No muzzle flash, no sound, nothing. "Thermal scan, now," Rashid barked. "Find her heat signature." Mahmoud, equipped with the thermal scope, swept the area. "I see nothing. No heat signatures above ambient temperature. Nothing human-sized moving." "Impossible." Everyone produced heat. Even in a ghillie suit, even with cooling technology, a human body generated infrared signature, unless she wasn't where they were looking. "She's below us," Rashid realized. "On the slope, shooting upward." He shifted position, angling his rifle down the mountainside. The angle was all wrong. For most snipers, shooting uphill was easier, more natural. Shooting downhill required precise calculation for bullet drop and trajectory. Most snipers avoided it. But if she was shooting uphill at them, she'd be hidden by the terrain, invisible to their scopes, able to... Tariq grunted and fell silent. Rashid spun toward his position. Tariq's rifle lay abandoned. The man himself had simply vanished from sight behind the rocks. 3 down, just Rashid and Mahmoud now. "Back to back," Rashid ordered. "She can't get both of us." They positioned themselves in a small depression, each covering a hemisphere, their backs touching. Rashid's hands were steady on his rifle, but his heart hammered. In all his years of combat, he'd never felt like prey before. "Do you see anything?" Mahmoud whispered. "No, but she's out there." The wind shifted, rustling the grass around them. Rashid's eyes tracked every movement, every shadow. Somewhere in that landscape was a ghost who killed without sound, without sight, without leaving any trace. A bird called nearby, a common mountain finch. Rashid almost dismissed it, then remembered. Finches fled from human presence. They didn't call near hunters. He spun toward the sound, rifle up, finger on trigger. He saw only grass, rocks, and morning shadow. He fired anyway. 3 rapid shots at where the bird call had come from. The grass moved. Not from wind, from someone shifting position. "There!" Rashid shouted, firing again. Mahmoud turned, adding his fire to the barrage. 20 rounds chewed up the landscape. Dust and rock fragments flew. The grass disintegrated. When the echoes faded, Nothing moved. "Did we get her?" Mahmoud asked. Rashid approached carefully, rifle at his shoulder. Behind the shredded grass was a ghillie suit, carefully positioned around rocks and vegetation to create the illusion of a prone sniper, but no body, no blood. A decoy. Behind him, Mahmoud gasped once and fell. Rashid spun, but saw nothing, only empty mountainside and the bodies of his team. He was alone, the last of Malik's hunter squad, and he still hadn't seen the person killing them. Through his radio, Commander Malik's voice crackled. "Rashid, status?" Rashid looked at the ghillie suit decoy, at the calculated precision of the trap, at the terrain that had been turned into a killing field by someone who understood it better than any local. "Commander," Rashid said slowly, "we need to withdraw. All units. Now." "Withdraw? Have you gone mad?" "The Americans have a demon in these mountains. I've lost my entire team and I still haven't seen her. Pull everyone back or we're all dead." Silence on the radio. Then quietly, "There are rumors. Stories from the Rangers. They call her the Grass Phantom." Rashid looked out at the mountainside, at the 1,000 places someone could hide, could shoot from, could become part of the landscape itself. He thought of the perfect placement of the decoy, the expert use of terrain, the complete understanding of how hunters think. "The rumors are true," Rashid said, "and we cannot beat her. Not here, not on her ground." He didn't wait for Malik's response. He began moving downslope, keeping low, accepting that he was only alive because she'd chosen to let him go. The message was clear. "Tell your commander what happens to those who hunt the Phantom." Behind him, unseen in the grass 200 meters away, Master Sergeant Grace Winters lowered her rifle. The Dragunov sniper was smart. He'd learned when to retreat. She appreciated that. But his commander wouldn't, which meant the fight wasn't over yet. Grace Winters had been dead for 3 years. Officially dead, anyway. Killed in action during a ranger operation in the Hindu Kush. There had been a memorial service, a flag ceremony, her name added to the roll of the fallen. Her family received a medal they couldn't display publicly, given the classified nature of her final mission. Only a handful of people knew the truth. Grace had survived, barely. Her ranger squad had been ambushed in a narrow valley, almost exactly like the situation SEAL Team 7 faced now. Intelligence had failed them. Support had been delayed. Her teammates, people she'd trained with, fought alongside, loved like family, had died around her. Staff Sergeant David Winters, her husband of 2 years, had bled out in her arms, using his last breath to tell her to run, to survive, to live. She'd refused. She'd stayed with the squad, fighting until ammunition ran out, until only she remained, surrounded by bodies of both friends and enemies. The QRF found her still shooting, using captured enemy weapons. Wounded in 4 places, but refusing to quit. They medevaced her to Germany, then Walter Reed, then through a series of increasingly secretive medical facilities. The Army wanted to know how she survived when 8 other Rangers didn't. The answer was simple and terrible. She'd been lucky, and they hadn't. But the Army called it exceptional tactical capability under extreme duress. They offered her a position with a classified unit. She refused. She'd had enough of orders, enough of missions planned by people far from the fighting, enough of promises that support would come in time. So they processed her out, gave her a new identity, a pension under a fake name, and official documents declaring her dead. They thought she'd fade into civilian life, maybe become a contractor, maybe teach at some private security school. Instead, she came back to the mountains. For 3 years, Grace had operated alone in the border regions, tracking militia movements, identifying training camps, mapping supply routes. She fed intelligence to U.S. forces through anonymous channels. When she spotted American units in danger, she intervened. The Grass Phantom was born from necessity, from skill, and from a promise made at her husband's grave. No more Rangers would die alone if she could prevent it. No more teams would call for help that never came. She'd extended that promise to all Special Operations Forces, SEALs, Delta, Marine Raiders, Air Force PJs. If they were trapped, if they were dying, if they called for help into the void, she answered. Grace moved through the grass now, relocating to a new position before Malik's forces could reorganize. She carried a custom M24 rifle, suppressed, with optics she'd acquired through channels she never disclosed. Her ghillie suit was handmade from local vegetation, painstakingly crafted to match every season, every terrain type. She could vanish into landscape that offered no concealment. She could remain motionless for hours, breathing so slowly that thermal scopes couldn't distinguish her from the ground. She'd forgotten more about fieldcraft than most snipers ever learned. People called her a phantom, but Grace was all too real. Every shot was real. Every saved life was real. Every night she spent alone in the mountains, eating cold rations and sleeping in camouflaged hides, was viciously, exhaustingly real. She checked her watch. Morrison's team should be nearly to the safe zone now. Another 2 minutes and they'd be in defilade, protected by terrain from anything Malik could throw at them. Then a quick march to the alternate extraction point, and a helicopter ride home. But Malik wouldn't let them go easily. He'd lost too much face, too many men. He'd do something desperate. Grace keyed her radio, using the encrypted frequency Morrison's team was monitoring. Ripper 7? Status? Shepard, this is Ripper 7 actual. We're approaching the defilade. Another 100 meters. Good. Once you're in cover, stay there. The QRF is 15 minutes out. Helicopter extraction will be at Falcon 2, approximately half a kilometer north of your position. Understood. Shepard, we owe you more than. Save it. Just get your people home. What about you? Grace scanned the valley below. She could see militia forces massing, preparing for something. Malik was down there somewhere, likely coordinating from a command position. She could see the communications van that served as his mobile headquarters. I'm staying. Unfinished business. Shepard, you've done enough. Fall back with us. Negative. This ends today. She clicked off the radio before Morrison could argue. He meant well, but he didn't understand. This wasn't about saving one SEAL team. It was about sending a message to every militia commander in the region. American forces were not helpless prey. Someone was watching. Someone would make them pay. Grace settled into her final firing position, a natural nest in the rocks that offered overlapping fields of fire and 3 exit routes. She'd prepared this position months ago during one of her reconnaissance patrols. Every approach was ranged. Every angle calculated. Every piece of cover mapped. She'd fought the Hunter squad on terrain she'd chosen, using tactics they couldn't predict. Now she'd fight Malik's entire force the same way. Through her scope, she saw militia fighters deploying heavy weapons, RPGs, machine guns, even a recoilless rifle. They were preparing to shell Morrison's position, hoping to finish what the ambush started. Grace smiled without humor. Malik was about to learn why the Grass Phantom had become a legend. Commander Malik stood beside his communications van, studying the tactical map with growing rage. His well-planned ambush had failed. His Hunter squad was dead. The American SEAL team was escaping. All because of one woman hiding in the grass like a coward. Coward, he muttered, afraid to face us honorably. His second in command, Captain Farouk, wisely said nothing. Farouk had been in these mountains longer than Malik, understood them better, respected them more. He'd heard the whispers about the Grass Phantom. He'd seen the bodies she left behind enemy fighters shot so precisely that sometimes entire squads died before understanding they were under attack. Malik pointed at the map. The Americans are here, in this defilade. We cannot get a direct line of fire, but if we position mortars here and here, we can rain shells into their position. They will have no escape. Commander, perhaps we should let them go. We have already lost many men today. Malik spun, his face flushed with anger. Let them go? After they humiliated us? After they killed 30 of our fighters? No, they die today. And when we have killed them, I will find this phantom and show her what happens to women who pretend to be soldiers. Farouk nodded, but his eyes were worried. As you command, I will organize the mortar teams. Malik watched Farouk leave, then turned back to his map. The American relief force was still 10 minutes away. Plenty of time to destroy the SEAL team and disappear into the mountains before reinforcements arrived. He never saw the woman in the grass, 800 meters away, her rifle scope centered on his chest. Grace watched Malik through her optic, her finger resting lightly on the trigger. One shot. Malik would be dead before the sound reached the valley floor. The command structure would collapse. The militia would fragment. But she didn't take the shot. Not yet. Because beside the communications van, she could see something that made her pause. A white flag, partially visible under a tarp. A flag that would be used by Malik's fighters to conduct a false surrender, drawing American forces into another ambush. Grace had seen that tactic before, had lost friends to it. She needed to neutralize that option before eliminating Malik. She shifted her aim to the fighter guarding the van, breathed, fired. The suppressed rifle made a soft thump, like someone striking a leather cushion. 800 meters away, the guard collapsed. Inside the van, she knew, Malik would be wondering why his guard had fallen. Suspicious, but not yet panicked, he'd send someone to check. Grace waited. Patient. Calm. A second fighter emerged from the van. She dropped him before he'd taken 2 steps. Now Malik would understand. Now he'd react. The remaining fighters around the van scrambled for cover, shouting warnings. Malik himself stayed inside, using the van's armor for protection. Smart, Grace acknowledged, but not smart enough. She adjusted her aim to the van's communications antenna. Fired. The antenna toppled, severing Malik's link to his scattered forces. Panic rippled through the militia positions. Without command and control, they were just armed groups scattered across difficult terrain, unable to coordinate, unable to mass fires, unable to execute any complex tactics. Grace began working through her target list systematically. She'd spent 3 years studying Malik's organization, identifying key personnel, mapping his command structure. She knew who carried radios, who led squads, who were the veteran fighters versus the recruits. She targeted the veterans first, the ones who'd keep their heads in chaos, the ones who'd rally the others. Her rifle coughed softly. 900 meters away, a squad leader fell. Fired again. A fighter with a radio dropped. Again, a machine gunner slumped over his weapon. Militia fighters began abandoning their positions, running for deeper cover. The disciplined assault Malik had planned dissolved into chaos. Without leadership, without communications, they reverted to self-preservation. Through her scope, Grace saw Malik emerge from the van, screaming orders that no one could hear, waving his arms frantically. He was losing control of his entire force, watching years of careful recruitment and training evaporate in minutes. Grace centered her crosshairs on his chest, breathed out, began her trigger squeeze. Then she stopped. Because killing Malik would make him a martyr. His fighters would remember him as a commander who died bravely facing an enemy. The mythology would attract new recruits, fuel new attacks, but letting him live, letting him survive as the commander who lost an entire operation to one woman he never saw, who ran from a ghost he couldn't fight, that would destroy his credibility more effectively than any bullet. Grace shifted her aim to the ground beside Malik's feet. Fired. Dirt exploded inches from his boots. Malik stumbled backward, falling, scrambling for the cover of the van. A second shot hit the ground where he'd been standing. A third destroyed the van's side mirror. The message was clear. I can kill you whenever I want. You live because I allow it. Run. Malik ran. His remaining fighters saw their commander fleeing and followed. Within 2 minutes, the militia force that had threatened to overrun SEAL Team 7 was in full retreat, abandoning weapons, abandoning wounded, abandoning any pretense of tactical discipline. Grace watched them go, then keyed her radio. Ripper 7, the threat is eliminated. Area is clear for extraction. Morrison's voice came back, shaken. Shepard, I'm watching this through my scope. Did you just rout an entire militia company by yourself? They routed themselves. I just provided motivation. Your QRF should be arriving in about 5 minutes. Get to Falcon 2 for pickup. Roger that. Shepard, when we get back to base, I'm putting you in for a... Don't. No commendations. No awards. No records of this operation mentioning me. I don't exist, Commander. That's how this works. Silence on the radio. Then, quietly, why? Why do you do this if you don't want recognition? Grace thought about David, about the promise she'd made, about the 8 Rangers who died because help came too late. She thought about every close call she'd prevented, every team she'd saved, every soldier who went home to their family because a ghost in the grass had been watching. Because someone has to, she said simply. Shepard out. She clicked off the radio and began the process of extracting from her hide. Within 15 minutes, she'd be 3 kilometers away, invisible in terrain she knew better than anyone. Within an hour, she'd be back at her current base camp, a cave system she'd carefully prepared with supplies, equipment, and contingency plans. The grass phantom would fade back into legend, just another story soldiers told themselves in the mountains, until the next time someone needed saving. The MH-60 Black Hawk helicopter touched down at Forward Operating Base Hammer 18 hours after the ambush. Morrison climbed out first, exhausted but whole. His team followed, helping Henderson, who'd be on a plane to Germany within the hour for surgery but would keep his leg. The 3 rescued intelligence officers were already being debriefed, but they'd made a point of shaking Morrison's hand before being whisked away. They'd live to see their families, to finish their careers, to grow old. They'd come within minutes of a very different outcome. Colonel Richard Barnes, the FOB commander, met Morrison on the tarmac. "Hell of a day, Jake." "Yes, sir. I read the preliminary after-action report. Want to explain the part about the mysterious guardian angel?" Morrison had known this conversation was coming. "Sir, someone with extensive sniper training and intimate knowledge of that terrain provided overwatch during our extraction. Without that support, we'd all be dead." "Someone. Care to be more specific?" "I can't, sir. I never saw them, only heard them over the radio. They used the call sign, Shepherd." Barnes studied Morrison's face. "Shepherd? Not ghost? Not phantom?" "Shepherd, sir." The colonel nodded slowly. "Son, I've been in these mountains for 2 tours now. I've heard the stories. Hell, I've seen evidence of her work, but officially, she doesn't exist. You understand that?" "Yes, sir." "Good. Because if you write in your official report that a dead soldier saved your team, it raises questions, awkward questions, questions that important people prefer not to answer." Morrison understood. Grace Winters was a ghost because the army needed her to be. A legend they could neither acknowledge nor eliminate, an asset they'd lost control of, but couldn't afford to hunt. "Sir, what if I wanted to find her? To thank her properly?" Barnes actually laughed. "Jake, Delta has been trying to locate her for 3 years. The agency has assets looking. Hell, JSOC has a standing offer. Come back, name your terms, pick your missions." She doesn't respond. Doesn't want to be found. But she saves our people. Always has. 27 confirmed interventions in 3 years. Probably more that never got reported. She picks the fights, she makes the saves, she vanishes. We've learned to accept it. Morrison looked out at the mountains, at the terrain where Grace was still out there, still alone, still fighting a war no one had ordered her to fight. "It's not right, sir. She shouldn't be alone." "Maybe not, but it's what she chose. Best we can do is honor that choice and be grateful she's on our side." 3 days later, Morrison was home. Sarah met him at the door, 8 months pregnant now, her face showing the strain of those terrible hours when she'd known something had gone wrong but had no details. They held each other for a long time without speaking. Finally, Sarah pulled back. "They told me there were complications, that you almost didn't make it. We had help." "What kind of help?" Morrison thought about how to explain something he barely understood himself. An angel in the grass, Sarah, someone who refused to let good men die if she could prevent it. "Should I thank this angel?" "You can't. She's gone. But yeah, you should. We all should." That night, after Sarah fell asleep, Morrison sat on their porch and looked up at the stars. Somewhere, thousands of miles away, Grace Winters was looking at the same stars from a mountainside most people would consider uninhabitable. He'd written a letter, old-fashioned, on paper and given it to Colonel Barnes. Barnes had promised it would reach certain channels, that it might find its way to the right person. In it, Morrison had written, "I don't know if you'll read this. I don't know if you want to hear from the people you save. But I needed to say thank you. Not just for my life, but for my chance to be a father. My wife is due in a month, our daughter. We're naming her Grace, after a woman we never met but who gave us everything that matters. If you ever need anything, if you ever want to come in from the cold, you have family waiting. You're not as alone as you think. Jake Morrison." He doubted she'd respond. But maybe, somewhere in those mountains, a ghost would read those words and feel a little less isolated, a little more connected to the people she'd sworn to protect. 2 months after the ambush, Grace sat in her cave camp, cleaning her rifle by lamplight. A supply drop had arrived through her anonymous channels: food, ammunition, medical supplies, and a packet of letters. She almost never read them. The letters from families of soldiers she'd saved, from commanders grateful for interventions they couldn't officially acknowledge, from intelligence officers who wanted to recruit her. She'd read a few in the early days, then stopped. They made it harder to maintain the isolation she needed, the emotional distance that kept her sharp. But tonight, for reasons she couldn't explain, she opened one. The handwriting was crisp, military precise. She read Morrison's words once, then again, then a third time. Grace. A little girl named Grace who'd grow up with her father because a stranger in the grass had refused to let him die. She set the letter aside and walked to the cave entrance, looking out at the night sky. The same stars Morrison had watched, the same constellations that had guided soldiers for millennia. Maybe she wasn't as alone as she'd thought. Maybe the promise she'd made at David's grave had become something larger than personal vengeance or survival guilt. Maybe she'd found a purpose that transcended the pain of what she'd lost. The mountains were dark and quiet, but Grace knew that somewhere out there, teams were operating. Good people doing dangerous work, sometimes without adequate support, sometimes let down by systems that failed at critical moments. And if they found themselves in trouble, if they sent out a desperate call for help, if they faced death in a narrow valley or mountain pass, there was someone watching. Someone who'd learned long ago that sometimes the system couldn't save you, but an individual could. Grace Winters returned to her rifle, continued her maintenance routine, and prepared for the next mission. Because tomorrow, or next week, or next month, someone would need saving. And the grass phantom would be ready. "I don't need recognition," she'd once told a puzzled intelligence officer who tried to debrief her after an intervention. "I need soldiers to go home to their families. That's the only mission that matters." In a small house in Virginia, Jake Morrison held his newborn daughter and whispered a story about angels and phantoms and promises kept. Grace Morrison would grow up never knowing she carried the name of a legend, a ghost who'd given her father the gift of coming home. But somewhere in the mountains of Afghanistan, a woman in a ghillie suit smiled for the first time in weeks, cleaned her rifle, and prepared to keep her promise one more time. The Grass Phantoms War continued, one saved life at a time, one mission no one else would acknowledge, one legend that soldiers told themselves in the dark. And somewhere, a little girl named Grace slept safely, while another Grace kept watch over soldiers who might need a miracle. The circle, imperfect but real, held.